The entire city watched in disbelief as the most powerful billionaire in the country lowered his sword in silence after a young woman he had underestimated disarmed him in only 3 seconds. He had entered the fencing arena expecting to teach her a lesson in humility, but before anyone could even understand what happened, the man known for defeating competitors, investors, and rivals had been defeated by someone he thought was beneath him. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stories like this remind us that true strength is not measured by wealth, fame, or power, but by the heart we carry when nobody expects us to be great. For years, Everett Whitmore had been known as a man who could never be challenged. At 42 years old, he was the founder of a global technology empire that stretched across continents. His name appeared on the covers of business magazines, his decisions moved markets, and his private meetings were attended by people who waited years for a chance to speak with him. To the outside world, Everett was the definition of success. But behind the polished suits, expensive cars, and towering glass offices was a man who had slowly forgotten what it felt like to lose. Every victory had made him more confident, but it had also made him less patient. He began believing that money could solve every problem and that intelligence alone could defeat every obstacle. Everett's greatest passion outside business was fencing. He had practiced the sport since childhood, not because he loved competition, but because he loved control. The discipline of the blade, the precision of movement, and the ability to predict an opponent's next step fascinated him. Over the years, he became a respected amateur fencer, winning private tournaments against wealthy executives and former champions. His friends admired his skill, but those closest to him noticed something changing. Everett no longer fenced to enjoy the sport. He fenced to prove that he was always the strongest person in the room. That changed the day he met Genevieve Callahan. Genevieve was not famous. She did not own a company, appear in magazines, or walk through rooms expecting people to recognize her. She was a fencing instructor at a small community sports center that helped children and young adults discover confidence through discipline and teamwork. Her life had not been easy. Years earlier, she had been one of the most promising young fencers in Europe, but a serious injury ended her dreams of competing professionally. Many people around her expected her to give up. Instead, she turned her disappointment into something meaningful. She began teaching others, especially young people who felt overlooked or forgotten. Genevieve believed fencing was never truly about defeating another person. It was about understanding yourself. She taught her students that a sword was not a symbol of anger or superiority. It was a tool that demanded patience, respect, and control. When Everett first visited the community center, he was there for a charity event. He had donated money to renovate the building, and everyone was grateful for his generosity. But during the event, he noticed Genevieve correcting a group of young fencers. She did not treat them like beginners. She treated them like people capable of greatness. Everett watched as she calmly helped a nervous teenager overcome fear after making several mistakes. Instead of criticizing the student, she focused on building confidence. Something about her approach bothered him because it was so different from his own. He was used to pressure creating results. She believed encouragement created growth. Their disagreement became noticeable when Everett offered to sponsor a larger program but suggested that the students needed stricter training and harsher discipline. Genevieve respectfully explained that people could not be pushed into greatness by making them feel small. Those words stayed with Everett because they touched a part of himself he refused to acknowledge. He had spent years believing that kindness was weakness. Yet here was someone with far less money and influence who seemed more respected and admired than he was. Instead of reflecting, Everett took her disagreement as a challenge to his pride. A week later, during a public charity gathering at the center, Everett announced that he wanted to face Genevieve in a fencing match. Many people assumed it was a friendly exhibition, but those who knew him understood there was something more behind it. Everett wanted to prove that experience, wealth, and confidence mattered more than a teacher from a small sports center. The crowd gathered during the bright afternoon event as sunlight filled the outdoor fencing area. Children, parents, donors, and community members watched with curiosity. Genevieve accepted the challenge, not because she wanted attention, but because she believed Everett needed to learn something that no business meeting had ever taught him. Everett entered the arena wearing professional fencing equipment. His posture showed complete confidence. Years of success had taught him to expect victory before the competition even began. Genevieve stood across from him quietly. She did not look nervous. She did not look angry. She simply looked prepared. When the match began, Everett moved quickly, using powerful attacks designed to overwhelm his opponent. He expected Genevieve to react emotionally or defensively. Instead, she watched carefully, studying his movements. She noticed something others had missed. Everett was not fencing against her. He was fencing against the fear of being wrong. His movements were aggressive because he wanted to control every second. His attacks were predictable because he believed strength meant forcing others to surrender. Genevieve waited for the exact moment when his confidence became carelessness. In 3 seconds, everything changed. Everett stepped forward with a powerful strike. Genevieve moved with perfect timing, turning slightly, redirecting his blade, and using his own momentum against him. Before the crowd could understand what happened, his sword was no longer in his hand. It landed softly on the ground. The entire arena became silent. The billionaire who had entered expecting to humble someone else had been humbled himself. But Genevieve did not celebrate. She did not smile proudly or raise her weapon like a champion. She simply lowered her own sword and looked at him with respect. That moment affected Everett more than losing ever could. He had lost thousands of dollars in business deals before. He had faced competitors who tried to destroy him. But this was different. He had been defeated by someone who had every reason to embarrass him and chose not to. For the first time in many years, Everett felt something unfamiliar. Humility. After the match, many people expected him to leave in anger. They expected him to blame circumstances or search for excuses. Instead, he stayed and watched Genevieve continue teaching the children. He noticed things he had ignored before. He saw a young boy who had been afraid to hold a fencing sword now standing confidently. He saw parents thanking Genevieve for believing in their children. He saw a community built not on money, but on trust. That afternoon changed the way Everett looked at success. Over the following months, he returned to the community center many times. At first, people were suspicious. They wondered if he was only there for publicity. But slowly, they saw a different side of him. He began listening instead of giving orders. He asked what the students needed instead of assuming he knew better. He funded new equipment, but he allowed Genevieve and her team to decide how it should be used. Most importantly, he began repairing relationships in his own life. Everett reached out to former employees he had treated unfairly. He apologized to friends he had pushed away. He realized that while he had built an enormous company, he had neglected the people who made his life meaningful. Genevieve became one of the few people who could challenge him without fear. She never tried to change him by force. She simply showed him another way to live. Over time, Everett understood that the 3-second defeat had not been a loss. It had been a gift. The greatest victory of his life was not becoming richer or more powerful. It was becoming someone worthy of the respect he had always wanted. Years later, the community center became one of the most successful youth fencing programs in the region. Many of its students went on to achieve incredible things, but they all carried the same lesson Genevieve had taught them: a person's value is not determined by how many people they can defeat, but by how many lives they can improve. Everett continued fencing, but he never again entered the arena to prove he was better than someone else. He fenced to learn, to connect, and to remember the day when a woman with patience and courage showed him that even the strongest people need to grow. The world had expected a billionaire to teach a lesson that day. Instead, a humble teacher gave one. Before the story ends, we invite you to leave a meaningful comment sharing what lesson touched your heart the most. Was it the importance of humility, the power of kindness, or the courage to change when we realize we were wrong? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Because sometimes the person who defeats us is not our enemy. Sometimes they are the person who helps us discover who we were always meant to become.